What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of American Exceptionalism is a Lie. As always, I am your host, Zach Cronin, and today we're going to be talking about Team USA, more specifically, their performance at the 2023 FIBA World Cup, their disappointing performance, I should add, and their future going forward. This was the second consecutive World Cup wherein the United States not only failed to win the gold, but failed to medal at all. After getting off to a dominant start in both exhibition and group play, the United States lost to Lithuania, and I believe it was the final round of group play. After that, they squared off with the Italian national team in a performance that was so crushing, so disrespectful. It was akin to taking a dry spaghetti noodle and snapping it. After that, the bad luck only began to compound. They went up against Germany in the semifinals, a team they had already beaten previously in the tournament, and lost a very close game. It was a crushing defeat, 113 to 111 at the hands of the Germans. After that, they faced off against Canada, the 51st state, in the third place game, and they lost because of a performance from Dylan Brooks that we are likely never to see again. This World Cup, the way it ended, has prompted a lot of questions about Team USA, and I don't want to make this video I don't want to make this video centric on this present team, the 2023 FIBA World Cup team, but I have to touch on it. As we've seen in recent FIBA World Cups, the teams that Team USA has put together aren't the worst, but they are certainly far from the best. The premier talents in the NBA, at least the premier American talents in the NBA, are becoming more and more reluctant to participate in the World Cup, pardon me, largely because it is unnecessary mileage that they're putting onto their bodies. However, this doesn't mean that this entire team was a dub. There were a few bright spots, namely Anthony Edwards. I want to apologize to the Ant-Man. I was entirely unfamiliar with your game. I knew that Ant was a good player. I knew he had star potential, but after seeing how he performed in this World Cup, by far the best and most consistent player, there is no doubt in my mind that not only will Anthony Edwards be a lock to play for Team USA in every international contest going forward, but I think he is undeniably a future superstar in the NBA. Average damn near 19 points per game. He just looked it not to the same level as Kevin Durant, but when he was on the court, like, it was very clear that the offense was running through him, and it looked easy. He didn't seem rattled at all by the FIBA rules, the international style of play, just like the minutia of the game didn't bother him, which was great to see, especially from a young player. Mikal Bridges played well. Also, Austin Reeves, I want to touch on both of them, averaged about 13 points per game, I believe. Tyrese Halliburton looked great as a facilitator. Jalen Brunson did have some moments as well, although I don't think he played up to the expectations from both fans and from Team USA. I'm sure, I mean, I don't really know how many people expected him to be the best player on this team. He certainly had the potential to be the best player on that team, but I think that core is fine. There were, of course, some ancillary pieces, Bobby Portis, Paolo Banchero, but I'm not going to touch on them. I'm not going to touch on those guys too much because, again, I don't want this to be a whole dissection of this Team USA roster. The biggest issue for Team USA in this World Cup was size. Steve Kerr played small pretty much the entire tournament. The only bigs on this team were Jaren Jackson Jr., Bobby Portis, and Walker Kessler. They got beat up pretty badly on the offensive glass. Across these 8 games, there was a differential on the offensive glass of plus 19 for their opponents. Steve Kerr elected to play small for a large portion of the World Cup. And additionally, the only real bigs on this team were Jaren Jackson Jr., Bobby Portis, and Walker Kessler. Triple J was the only big to average more than 15 minutes per game, with Bobby Portis lagging behind him at 12. Neither of them were notable on the glass. In fact, the most notable member of Team USA in the rebounding department was Josh Hart, who was all of 6'5". He averaged more rebounds than Bobby Portis, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Walker Kessler. Now, Walker Kessler, who I would consider like the only true center on this team, managed to play just 56 minutes across these 8 contests. There was this one stat that blew my mind. Now, Jaren Jackson Jr. secured 20 rebounds in this FIBA World Cup tournament, which was just 4 more than Walker Kessler, despite Jaren Jackson Jr. having an hour's worth of playtime more than Kessler. I don't want to say the height disadvantage has always been an Achilles heel for Team USA, but I do believe it is becoming more prevalent. European countries, for some reason, just tend to produce extremely tall players who are also exceptionally skilled. The skill aspect of it comes down to just the teaching philosophies instilled into these guys when they're children. I don't know where the fuck the height comes from. It seems that every year there's always like 1 or 2 7-footers coming out of some Eastern European country, some post-Soviet state where they're just like 7 feet tall and are remarkably deft on the perimeter. I mean, we've seen it with Jokic. We have Wemby, who obviously just got drafted first overall in this past draft. Like, I don't know if it's because on average European countries just tend to be taller. Like the average person is taller in Europe than in the United States, and maybe that extends to athletics as well. It is just very odd. Additionally, it's going to be hard for Team USA to compete against these teams when guys like Anthony Davis aren't playing, when Kevin Durant isn't playing, even Paul George, a wing player who has some size. I don't think I can overstate it. This team for the United States was just overmatched. I think I've spent enough time burying the lead here where I can finally address the question I posed in the title. And I hate to break it to you guys, but it is an anticlimactic answer. And admittedly, it's not even an answer at all. It is a loaded question. To say whether or not the U.S. is still the premier basketball country, it is inherently a yes and no answer because technically, the United States, as it stands right now, is not the best country in the world when it comes to basketball. That belongs to Germany. They earned it. Congratulations to them. I hadn't had a chance to congratulate them, but they beat a handful of fantastic opponents. They beat the U.S., they beat Serbia, who I think was ranked 6th in the FIBA World Cup ranking. So as of right now, it is Germany. I'm not going to sit here and put my hating pants on. I'm not going to put an asterisk next to this German team. I'm not going to say the old, oh,
But the United States didn't send their best talent.
caveat. It doesn't matter. We're dealing with this tournament that just happened, and as it stands, the United States is the 4th best basketball team in the world behind Germany, Serbia, and Canada. However, the yes portion of this answer comes when you account for every country operating at full strength. If you take the United States, if you take the best basketball players in the NBA who were born in the United States and have the ability to compete with the United States in FIBA sanctioned events, historically, the United States has been the best basketball country, and I expect that to continue as long as, again, this is the only caveat, as long as the best players are competing for the United States. The United States has won more medals in FIBA competition than any other country. Their 5 golds are tied for the most all time with the former Yugoslavia. If it was still a country today, would be neck and neck with the United States. So I think that Team USA should be thankful that Yugoslavia broke up because that team would undeniably be a huge pain in the ass for the United States. Additionally, when you look at their Olympic record, it is hard to argue against. They've won 16 of 20 gold medals at the Olympics, including 7 of the last 8 starting in 1992 when NBA players were allowed to compete in the Olympics. It is hard to argue against the United States being the best basketball country on the planet. However, I will be the first person to acknowledge that things are changing and they're changing very rapidly. Long gone are the days of the United States national team just showing up and draxing whatever opponent they went up against. There was a time when the United States could pretty much just show up, be on autopilot, and cruise to a gold medal in whatever event, which is no longer the case. International talent has grown exponentially over the last couple of decades. Look no further than the most recent MVP race where you had 3 finalists, all of whom were international players. Jokic, Embiid, and Giannis. Let's also throw Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in there, who is also international, even though Canada to even though Canada to some may be the 51st state, but it's hard to imagine a situation where the United States just walks to another gold medal. I will say, I will go even as far as to say that the United States will not have success internationally unless they bring one or two top 15 players, and this most recent World Cup showed that. Anthony Edwards, I think, is a top 20 player. Jalen Brunson, I think, is a top 20 player as well. But they are not Kevin Durant. They are not Steph Curry. They are not, James Harden in his prime. They're not Russell Westbrook in his prime. You just need a superstar on these rosters. I mentioned KD, I mentioned Steph, I mentioned Harden, Russell Westbrook, Derrick Rose. Those were the kinds of guys who were on the 2010 FIBA World Cup team. They were on the 2014 FIBA World Cup team, and those teams performed well. Again, it just comes down to ultimately a talent issue. There was no Jason Tatum this year. There was no Jaylen Brown. There was no Paul George. I don't know how many times I could reiterate it. This was simply just not the best team that Team USA could have put together. I think that the best thing to come from this borderline embarrassing showing from Team USA in the Philippines is that it irritated LeBron enough to seemingly come out of international basketball retirement. Shortly after their loss, it was reported by Shams Charania that LeBron is not only getting ready to represent Team USA in Paris at the 2024 Olympics, but he is also gathering his own group of stars. He's talked to Kevin Durant reportedly, he's talked to Steph Curry reportedly. This would also be Steph's first Olympics, by the way. And they are looking to construct a team to, again, represent the United States. And this is something that I expect for that stage. No disrespect to the FIBA World Cup, but the Olympics is the premier international basketball event. I would go so far as to say it is the premier basketball event only because it is the only arena where the best of the best from all of the countries around the world get to meet one another. Barring injury, stars from whatever country they hail from will be present at the Olympics. Giannis, Embiid, Jokic, Gobert, Luka, and this includes all of the stars that are American born as well. We mentioned LeBron, we mentioned KD, we mentioned Steph, but Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson potentially, Anthony Edwards potentially. The list goes on and on. And this is where the United States really begins to separate themselves from the rest of the world because collectively they have more talent than any other single country on the planet. Their bench units are good enough to go up against the starters from teams like Spain, Australia, Germany. I'm not going to say that the United States won't get upset because there are no guarantees, but I think that it's going to be very unlikely, again, given the sheer amount of talent that they have. It is almost an overwhelming amount of talent, but of course, talent isn't the only thing that wins you a basketball game. It's not the only thing that wins you a basketball tournament. There is how this talent plays with one another. I also don't see that really being an issue with this potential lineup going forward because these guys have played in the Olympics together. They have international experience together. They're older, they're more experienced. They know they just have a better general understanding of basketball knowledge than a younger team like the one we just saw. So, yeah, once again, I apologize for kind of tiptoeing around this answer, but I can't say, well, I mean, I can say definitively yes that the United States is not the best basketball team on the planet right now. But obviously, if you speculate and again you concentrate all of the talent from each country, it's hard to bet against the United States. But again, I don't want to overshadow what Germany accomplished. I don't want to overshadow what Serbia accomplished in this tournament. I don't even want to overshadow what Canada did in this tournament because regardless, like you still have to beat Team USA. And even though Steve Kerr acknowledged the fact that times are changing, like teams are better now. Teams are better from all across the world. Like you still have to overcome the potential mental hurdles of going up against Team USA, which is arguably the most dominant athletic force on the planet. Like at least among the major sports, you have of course the U.S. women's national team, Michael Phelps. I don't want to get into to all that. But at least in the basketball world, Team USA is undeniably historically the most talented and the most, I guess, like feared collection of basketball players that the international market has ever seen. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and close this video out. Thank you guys so very much for coming to hang out with me today. As always, everything I'm associated with is down in the description box below. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. Drop a comment as well. It really helps out with the algorithm. And with that, I'll catch y'all on the next one.